Is Joey Tarpany a must-have, Scoop?
I think he's close. I don't think he's a must-have, but I think he's getting close. He's very interesting with a few players like Sutton and Adam Elliott leaving. He's now the leader of the pack. I think if he gets 55 minutes, he'll definitely push that 60 average.
Yeah, 55 minutes. Imagine you can get that. It's funny how he had games where he'd get 45 minutes and get like a 78. Just crazy sort of PPMs there. Some days he would get the 55 minutes and go low, and then other days he'd get 55 minutes and get like a 90. So he was incredible. Just ran the ball so well, and they couldn't stop him. Offloads galore. Yeah, is there a chance that he averages sort of like that 65, 70 in certain times? Like, imagine if he comes out and does that. They have a fairly interesting draw to start. Cowboys up top. We're not sure how they're going to kick it off. They obviously played well last year, but you got Dolphins, Sharks, Knights to kick that off. And you think about the Dolphins and the Knights games, he could come out and get just plenty of offloads and attacking stats. He wasn't even really a guy that scored a lot of tries either. So very, very interesting.
Yeah. The only thing against him is that some guys who are around his price point don't have a buy heading into Origin. Guys like Cotter, Haas, Murray, all after round 13 buy, so it's a clean sheet. Tarpany does have a buy before then, but he is a non-Origin keeper, so that is in his favour as well.
And you imagine, like, we're likely picking Cleary, Hines, these types of players who have buys early. If you're looking at David Fafita, those types of players, they've all got buys round 4 or 5, Tedesco. One in round 8, you should be able to cover that. You're not going to captain Tarpany, most likely. So I think you'll be able to cover him in round 8. And then you get him all the way through to round 16. So that important round 13 buy, for example, he gets a game against the Bunnies. And really from there, it's just your big decision is when you trade him out in round 16 because he misses 2 of the next 5, for example. So yeah, I definitely have some interest in him. But 790k, it's a big chunk of money, right?
It definitely is. It's hard one to fit in, especially if you want guys that are high ownership and really good upside like Cotter or potentially Carrigan. Fitting 2 of them plus Clear is going to be really, really tough. So I can see why some people don't want to have Tarpany and potentially get him straight up after the buy in round 9. I think if you're not going to start him in round 1, that's time to get him. It's just, do you think that was a one-off, that he starts slow, or whether he's going to come out all guns blazing with this Raiders team on his shoulders?
Yeah, and he's going to have a nice run up from that round 9 to round 16 as well. So definitely something to think about there. And yeah, it's just that worry of like how much cash can you spend on guys that are probably going to stay at a similar average or only slightly improve. There's probably only 2 or 3 guys you can select in that kind of price bracket for sure. So yeah, otherwise most people would want him for sure. Let's head up top with Nick Kotrick. He comes in at a bit of an awkward price, but he has scored better than this in the past for the Raiders. What are our thoughts on him in a Raiders team I think that's going to go pretty well? Give us both your thoughts on Kotrick and then also how you think Raiders will go.
I think Nick Kotrick needs to score a lot more tries for him to be relevant. They like to go to Rapana. Their centres last year, their young centres scored a lot, and I think it took away from Nick Kotrick a little bit. He only had about a 40% try scoring rate last year, whereas the year he was actually really relevant and he averaged high 30s. He was averaging like more that 60, 70% strike rate with tries. So if the Raiders get a roll on, especially towards Origin with that softer schedule, I think he could be one, but really just too many other options with more upside at this stage.
Yeah. Let's have a little thought for Jared Croker. Let's hope that he does get to 300 games. I don't think, as you've said in the comments there, probably got too many players that are better than him at the moment, but I do hope he gets a chance at some point this year. Not going to be fantasy relevant, but let's hope he plays because he is an incredible point scorer. He's the 3rd most ever or something like that. Ridiculous.
That sounds about right. I think it might be Cameron Smith, El Masri, and yeah, Croker might be 3rd. I'm not dead sure on that, but yeah, he's been a fantastic guy for the Raiders.
Yeah, so just a little shout out to Jared there. Great career so far. Hopefully there's a few more games. Jamal Foggs, we have him as a 50-point scorer. 723 is the price. He has had a bunch of years now where he's averaged 50 to 55 kind of range and goes on little runs where he's an absolute superstar because he kicks goals and does everything. And then he has times where he gets injured. He has a few low games scoring wise. What are our thoughts with Foggs this year? Because they really turned it around, the Raiders, when he came in and was the focal point for them. And Whiten could sort of do his thing on the left there.
Yeah, he came in round 12 and started off a little bit slow, actually. He started with 31 and 47 before scoring mostly 50s to finish off the year. It just depends. Like, is that going to be better this year after a long layoff? Is it going to be better because of the settled spine, or not really because Levi, Starling, Wolford rotate so much? I think he's definitely got a couple of points of value in him, but when there's guys like Burton right at his price point, or Dewey a little bit more expensive, and Hastings just below him, I think you probably just have to let him go.
Yeah, I can completely agree with that. And guys, just quickly while we're here, we have been putting out a bunch of YouTube shorts across the start of February here. And Lockie's doing his Poduary, if that's exactly how we say it. Do you want to tell everyone a little bit more about that quickly?
Yeah, well, I love a pod this year. I'm going reasonably safe. I want to look for guys who potentially have been missed and a low ownership due to hidden factors like, well, Tony Staggs suffering his labrum injury. He's a little bit too high to be a pod, really, and coming off a long-term injury. That guys that just aren't as high ownership with potential upside. If you're really struggling for, say, a mid position, you saw with Braden Burns yesterday that there's potential upside, and even those really low guys in the low 0%. So more to come this year. 28 pods in 28 days leading into TLT.
Hell yeah, I'm excited for that. And I'm doing my predictions for the NRL ladder, one every day, and then going through a bunch of the players that everyone wants to talk about, the high value guys, the guys that are cheaper, and just in that under a minute guys, to jump on to the shorts tab on our site there, on our YouTube channel, sorry, and get into that. And also for the guys that are in the private group, big shout out to you guys. Jump in the description below, guys. Get a package and get around that. Scoop is in there and doesn't love a chat yet, but he'll get in there and he'll get around it. Plenty of value from him as well, along with these types of videos as well. So thanks for that. Let's get around Emre Guler at 367k now. 25.7 average last year was pretty low for him. PPM was very much down. He is training the house down, according to Joe Tarpany. What are our thoughts on Emre?
Yeah, at first I really hadn't much interest, but there's been one or two people just talking him up behind the scenes. So the question is, how much does Tarpany play this year? If he only plays low 50s and Emre Guler has to play more minutes at prop, or Horsburgh plays mostly lock and Guler steps up and fills some of those missing prop minutes, I think he could be good. But yeah, it's a tough one to predict. He's a bit like a cheap Dan Saifidi with some upside, definitely if he returns to higher PPM and higher minutes. It's just that at 367k, there's not a lot of people you can move him to if it goes wrong early on.
Yeah, it's a good little point there that Dan Saifidi just had that more of a down year. PPM was down as well, and potentially a little bit upside. But it is scary because they could just play the exact same way they did last year for sure. All right, Corey Harawira and Naira, CHN for those that know him well. 36 is the average, 517 is the price. Very awkward, I'll say. Do we think he's going to get that edge position, or is he going to be a bench guy again?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I'm tending to think he's going to be that bench guy, and with uncertain splits, if he plays lock or if he plays a little bit of edge. Whitehead didn't play 80 towards the back end of the year. He had about 4 games in his last 6 weeks, where he only played about 60 minutes. So if CHN plays 20 minutes there, 25 minutes lock, and splits a bit, it's really hard to predict what's going to happen. I think he's probably in a void, and Horsburgh's more the one you want to look at.
Okay, let's just go straight to Horsburgh then. At 590k, 41's the average. You've spoken about him here potentially getting Elliott's spot in that 13 role, which probably garners a sort of 55-minute role. What are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I think it really depends. Does he get the sort of 50, 51, 52 minutes or 53, 54, 55 minutes? Because that'll determine whether he's like a 48, 49 point player or pushes into that 50s and 10 points of value. I can see why he's slightly less owned than the guys replacing Elliott, who, when the Knights have preferred a really big minute lock in previous years, like Mann last year was averaging low to mid 60s sort of minutes at lock, and whereas at the Raiders it's probably 10 minutes less. So I can see definite upside for Horsburgh, but is it quite enough to get you interested? It's going to be up to how TLT lines up, I think. Yeah,
and we know Ricky obviously changes things a lot, so that's the other big scary thing. if CHN, for example, was named to start, does he get a 45-minute role, 50-minute role, which is probably not enough? Does he play there 1 or 2 games and then get dropped back to the bench? There's so many thoughts there. But if we do look at Horsburgh, he's had fairly consistent minutes the last few years when he has been on the park. So I think their middles, they don't change too much. It seems to be the edges, apart from like Hudson Young now, and what Elliot Whitehead's been. I think once he really trusts you, then you're locked in. Other than that, you seem to just be chopped and changed all the time, which is a bit scary for sure. Let's talk about their centres now then. We got Sebastian Chris and also Matty Tomoko. What are your thoughts on those two? Do they have any value?
I think Sebastian Chris is actually a tiny bit undervalued. He had a real good try scoring rate last year from memory, but I don't think he played all his games from centre. And if you take just his centre games, it moves more like to a 39 average. If you take the Raiders pretty soft draw, I think he can maintain that, but does he move into keeper territory, or is it just below it and sort of a waste of an option?
Yeah. And Matty Tomoko a bit cheaper, but still not much interest either, even with their great start. Their better team.
Yeah, I'd say if you're going to go one of the two to be Chris, but Tomoko is cheaper, but yeah, he'd need a really good try scoring rate and attack for the Raiders to be humming along and him to make some money.
There's a reason he's cheaper, hey? All right, let's go Trey Mooney. There's plenty of hype about this guy, 250K. What are your thoughts on him? Is he going to get the bench spot?
I think, well, there's even talk that he's training at the starting lock position. I doubt that he's going to play big minutes, but if he plays 30 minutes in the middle to finish off that lock position, I think he can average that high 20s and be a very good cash cow. Almost like, I think he could be the most likely play out of anybody to be this year's Max King. Starts in a low minute position after really impressing in juniors and trials, and slowly building up if he turns out to be a superstar.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Just looking at their team, they've got everyone ready to go, firing for round 1. So if he's in that 17, then you're thinking at least 15 to 20 minutes and potential for more if there's injuries. So if he's in that 17, I think he's locked into my side.
Yeah, he's been very close to my side, in and out over the last while. If he is in the team, I think there's a very good chance he'll be there.
Yeah. Josh Papali'i, he still managed to average 50. He does score a lot of tries to go along with his great base and attacking upside in terms of offloads and tackle breaks as well. But do we see him taking secondary role to Joey Tarpany this year, officially?
I think so. We saw it in Origin. He didn't play the huge grunt minutes that we've come to know from the Queensland stalwart, but he only played like sort of 20, 25 and then came off. Whether that's a sign that he can't do the crazy workload that he used to, and plus the rise of Tarpany, I'd probably think he'd be more towards 45 minutes a game instead of 50 minutes a game this year, and slowly winding down.
Yeah, not a big change, hey, but enough to not be an option in NRL Fantasy. We've got Jordan Rapana, who's, again, for some reason, been given 3 extra price point. So we're just avoiding him to start as well. He's always been a really solid scorer, but a 500K winger. Ugh.
Yeah, there's one winger every year that moves into the keeper bracket for wing fullbacks, and the rest are all fullbacks. A couple of years ago, it was him. After that, it was Nofaluma. Then it was To'o. I just don't think it'll be him again this year.
Yeah, that's fair. Little bold prediction then. Is there anyone you think could move into that bracket this year?
To'o has a chance of moving close to it.
Yeah,
I think with Kikau gone, they'll move towards the right a little bit more now. And even though Taylor May's there demanding some ball, he'll definitely have a couple points. It's just hard to predict who it'll be each year. I think To'o has a chance, but there's plenty of others.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's get to some excitement in Xavier Savage. We get him at a 31.6 price point, which is not ideal, up 3.3. Do we see him averaging 40?
I think yes.
Whoa, here we go.
He came in halfway through last year with CNK, not really sure what was happening with him. There was in and outs. Sometimes he was on the bench, then he was on the wing, and he finally took over the fullback position to finish off 2020. I think he had an injury in the last couple of games too, but I'm not dead sure on that. When he was at fullback, he did average over 35 points. I think it was close to 37. I think with a full preseason, another year under his belt as a youngster. And did you see the photos? He's bulked up tremendously. I imagine that's got to at least add to his tackle breaks and attacking abilities somewhat. So I think he can move that 37 fullback average to close to 40 at least, probably slightly above it.
The photos alone is 2 tackle breaks right there. So
I didn't have him in my team, and then the photo came out, and I'm like, well, I think I might just do that.
Yeah, we all do that in the preseason, don't we? The big thing for Savage, I think, was the fact that his tackle breaks were actually really low for a fullback. For a guy that's so fast, they seem to be able to get a hold of him fairly easily. Maybe that is because of his size and him bulking up a little bit. Just makes him a little bit harder to tackle. They talk about those big forwards that are just so big, strong, and stocky. They're just hard to even think about getting down. So add speed to that, and yeah, maybe just that alone, a couple of points of tackle breaks will get him.
Imagine a Katoni Staggs fend with the Savage speed. That would be awesome.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, and actually getting a lot more ball and not hiding out in the centers. Sorry, I do like Staggs, but. They do need to give him some more ball as well as Fafita, but they could both also go and get the ball a little bit more. Anywho, we move on. Oh, Brad Schneider. Let's just take a second for some memories of Schneider and his amazing start to last year. Thank you. We appreciate it. But he won't be of value this year, unfortunately. Any talk on Harley Smith-Shields?
From the talk, I think he's first centre back up if anything goes wrong.
Okay.
Coming off, I think, another ACL injury. I think he's had a couple in the last 2 years, but is really working into this preseason, and they're really, really happy with how he's going. At 250k with his, I think he's got dual, and if he does get there for a while or he breaks in past one of Tomoko or Chris, I think that'll be difficult given how well they did last year. But if he is there for a while, I mean, he's just slot straight into your team.
Yeah, for sure. Starling is a hampered gun. Please give him 80 minutes, Sticky. Poor Anything?
He's the guy who's a cash cow twice a year, and you can't jump on because you can't know. It's just so stressful.
Yeah, he's frustrating. And then you haven't been able to add him in yet, but Danny Levi comes over as well. Is that correct?
Yes, Levi is now in. I think he's been mentioned to be an equal chance between him, Starling, and Wolford. So that's even more uncertainty for someone like Paul Starling. So yeah. Levi is a lot cheaper though. I don't think his scoring has been that great, but he does love a burrow over try and with. I think there's a new rule that you have to have both feet behind the line for the 10 meters. So maybe he gets successful this year and makes a few extra points from that, but I'd want to see consistent minutes. And while all 3 of them are there and Sticky is the coach, I can't bring myself to do it.
Yeah, that rule's crazy, actually. That's going to be a massive thing for this year. That gives them pretty much almost an extra meter, right? Because it would be 1 foot on the line and 1 in front, or 1 foot behind the line and 1 in front almost. And
imagine guys like Cheese who love to go for burrow over. He'll make a lot more. He'll make a lot more burrow over tries this year.
And with them having to be back that little bit further, think about even the first receiver guys, the 5'8", these type of guys, they'll just have a little bit more space. So do we think, I think there could be some more tries in the outside backs for sure. And these, good line running back rowers for sure. I think it's actually going to make a fairly big impact this year. And it seems to be some type of rule each year that comes in and makes a big impact. So that might be this year's one. And that's something that we need to look at in the trials as well to see how that plays out and potentially make some changes in your round 1 team around that one. Last couple, really. We got Jack Whiten, I think, will be the next one we should talk about at 667, average of 46.7. Any interest in him?
He's always just around that keeper half bracket who gets talked around Origin time, and it's really a matter of will he get selected for Origin or will he miss the team, with guys like Burton or Nico Hines being the utility or the centre or the half. There's probably too many question marks about him, and he's never really been that gun. But if he isn't in the Origin squad, well, he's one you just want to keep a little bit of an eye on, especially because in round 13, there are so many high-scoring teams with good halves that are out. Dewey, Burton, Cleary, Munster, DC, all of them, even if they weren't playing Origin, still out because of the buys.
Yeah, which is crazy. He's just never really been that top line keeper, has he? Which is the main issue. Wolford will leave. He just won't get enough minutes. And Hudson Young, a nice finish here. He is up priced a little bit, 1.7 points up at 54 is where he's priced at. What are our thoughts on him? He scored a lot of tries last year is the big caveat for me as to if he can average a 55 plus. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think he's a little bit like Isaiah Yeo. I think he's priced at where he's going to score a gun, but not one that you want to start with. If he doesn't make the Origin squad, he's played so well last year and he deserved to be in the Australian side, but he could be one to pick up definitely if he's not in the Origin squad.
Yeah, and because we know that he can score really well, if he has a few lighter games or if he doesn't score tries for a little bit, he could drop down to sort of a 650, 680, 700 and could pick him up there maybe after round 9. We could have a look at him for first 7 and maybe the Raiders start off a bit slower. Like we say they've got a softer draw, but they still have the Cowboys, Sharks, Panthers in that 3 of the first 7. So it's not crazy, but the other ones you'd hope that they can score really well and play really well. Last thoughts on Raiders, Scoop?
I think I have them probably finishing around the same as last year, but a little bit more solidly. I think there's going to be a bit more consistency about them. And there's a couple of guns like that that are going to be really enticing to bring in around Origin time, like Tarpanay and Young. So looking forward to their season.
Amazing. And just a reminder, guys, get in, look at those shorts, check the playlist section as well. We have so many videos in there. If you're coming in now and haven't watched too many, they're all set out there. And also jump in that private group. Appreciate it, guys. See you later.